just don't get any tryptophan at all from any of the herd animals anymore, except for wild killed elk, probably, or animals of bison that are harvested in the wild and had a wild diet. And also, by the way, of course, in the age of chemtrails, even a wild diet for such animals is suspect. We've got to be really sharp about this as we go forward. I'm really investigating a lot of time into food production and perfecting the grow domes and looking at the ability to grow the specific kinds of foods that will provide us with the essential amino acid diets that we need in a vegetarian form. I'm looking at importing certain beans from Africa and starting growing them here because they're huge tryptophan producers, which is a very necessary amino acid, and it's hard to get anymore. So, something to be advised. Now, the mood cure is well worth reading. It affects probably 90% of the people in the United States. We can actually look at it the other way and say anybody in the North American continent, in the geopolitical, the United States, is part of 5% of the population of the planet. We're consuming 61% of all of the psychiatric meds. I would say that means we need to read this book and start taking these supplements as opposed to the meds themselves. Also note, if you go and read for content, most people don't, by the way, when they go to a psychiatric, or they go to Big Pharma and they start reading some of the psychiatric studies, they stop at the agendas. They never actually read any of the damn data. And the agendas are all written with, the abstracts are all written with an agenda. Well, it should be called an agenda because that's what it is. It's their take on what they want you to believe from that study. And I've never found any of those things to be accurate. They're lying bastards. So you go and you look at some of their stuff, they say, for instance, let's look at citalopram or Celexa. That product has got a multi-week period of time, as do most of these, before they're supposed to be effective on you. So in other words, you're taking this thing on the promise that after you get through 5 and 6 weeks of side effects, it will help your brain, and then you'll only have to live with the side effects that occur to you slowly over the next 25 years until you die. It's going to shrink your brain. All of these psychiatric meds do. It's not that one in particular, because and it does so quite simply, because your brain is essentially a giant soup of fatty acids, and all of these chemicals reduce the ability of the body to absorb fatty acids. It is a necessity that your brain will shrink as long as you take these chemicals. So there's all of these things within the literature that are not discussed. It takes 6 weeks. It's a promise of a cure. Note also that when you switch over and you get off of these drugs, which alter your blood pressure, and that's an issue, and so do this with knowledge and with thinking, and you start adjusting your diet, and you get into the point where you have the essential amino acids in your system. These essential amino acids, you will feel the effect within 30 to 50 to 80 minutes. You don't have to wait weeks. If it isn't working for you that day, you don't need it. You've got enough in your system. So it's an interesting duality here. The promise of long-term cure and having to spend thousands of dollars annually to get chemicals, or, they're expensive. I mean, you can spend $50, $80 to buy supplements for the essential amino acids, but that's probably 5 to 6 months supply, and then you taper off because you've reached what you need. And so it's not a permanent. And there's virtually no side effects other than a slight increase in blood pressure and a slight increase in potential for gastric distress if you take them wrongly. So really, really something to look into, guys, especially if you're going to wean yourself off of any of the psychiatric meds and attempt to restore yourself. You can. This is just because your brain has shrunk does not mean it has to stay shrunk. You can recover your lifespan. It is estimated the psychiatric chemicals will reduce your lifespan by 20 years on the average individual. But you can recover all of that once you get off of these chemicals, because you can get your omega-3 to omega-6 balance restored, and then you'll start reabsorbing fatty acids and the essential nutrients, and guess what? Your brain will swell right back up again the way it should be. So that can be good. You can recover from this. Now, as a side effect of all, or a side component to all of this, I'm working on getting my grow domes really good and skook them so that I don't have to screw around with commercial food. And, as much as Kathy and I always like the idea of a retirement on a place where we could have long row gardens and go tend the gardens, it isn't going to happen. We're just not going to grow out in the wild anymore, because in the days, as I state now, organic has a new meaning in the age of Fukushima and chemtrails. And so our organic food is going to be grown within the grow domes. Now, this has led to the idea that I need to have a method for heating the grow dome. So I built myself a rocket heater, a rocket mass heater, which I will put photos of on my site when I get it to the point where I'm pleased with its look. I have all the photos from the whole construction, so you get to see it all. They're really cool, guys. I'm able to heat this dome, raise its temperature significantly on waste wood that I've just got fallen from the trees on our property. I should be able to heat the whole thing to any temperature I desire. I could keep it tropical in there with very little work and very little wood. I'm talking on the order of a couple of cubic feet of wood a day in sub-zero temperatures in a single skin dome. Would be enough to maintain plant health, because the heat is radiant. It's coming out on the mass. It lasts for hours and hours and hours after the burn. In fact, when I get done with this Wujo here fairly quick, I'm going to go out and start playing around again, because Kathy is so much better. I can leave her for some period of time, in a half an hour, 40 minutes, without coming back in and checking. And I'm going to go out and finish up the mass part of it, and eventually, hopefully, later today, get around to doing some more of the cob and seal it all up, and then I'll take a really nice picture and show everybody on the page. But I've got a 32-foot diameter dome that has basically a height of about 17 feet, huge internal area. And I'll be able to heat it with little bits and pieces of wood that just fall from the tree. I won't have to split wood. Now, as an old fart, I'm 59 years old, and I'm doing a lot of work here to make myself healthy, but I'm looking forward, presumably, to surviving the next few years and having to exist in a world where, as an old guy, there's no infrastructure. There's not necessarily electricity to provide radiant heat from that, nor propane, nor could I afford the propane if it exists. Excuse me, everything is uncertain at this stage in that regard. And so it makes me feel very good that these rocket heaters are out there, and I can perfect my versions of them as we go forward, and that combined with the old masonry Russian-style fireplace, we've got a super efficient long-term heat storage. And guess what? Out in my dome, I can bottom heat. I'm going to make the cob bench component of it a certain size, and I'm not going to bottom heat only the plants. I'm going to heat my own damn bottom, because it's cold around here, and after I do my boat work and work on the property, I'm going into the greenhouse and bake out my old bones on this waste wood heat. Really worth investigating. You can build them yourselves. They're cheap. There are certain constraints you have to be aware of. So, for instance, if you're using galvanized pipe, you got to burn off the galvanized coating without you in the process being in there breathing it. Same thing is true of any paint on your 55-gallon drum or any other metals being used. You need to have these your ductwork be airtight. Duct tape works really well for that, along with high temperature sealant. I'm using galvanized pipe because it's out in the greenhouse and it's cheap. If I were going to do this in the house, I would use really good heavy-duty stovepipe, because I'd want to build one that's going to be long-lasting. I am, in fact, going to convert over the house we're into this form of heat, and should we be able to relocate, I will build vast quantities of rocket mass heaters in all the greenhouses on the new property, as well as whatever structure we get into. Propane is no longer viable, and I can't afford to use a traditional wood stove where I would have to supply 6 and 7 cords in an exceptionally cold winter. And bear in mind, I think we will go through a couple of those over these next few years as we come back towards stability on this planet. And who knows what the environment will be then. It may be that it may be necessary for the planet to go through a period of extreme cold that will force us all into refugee status, as well as trying to survive and thrive and live well. Actually, I hate that word thrive, since those fucktards took it over for their New World Order organization. But we will have big key and go forward, and in order to do that, We need to get our diets adjusted. We need to have these supporting tools around us. We can take control of our own destiny with these key technologies. Some of the key technologies, as I mentioned, are, understanding your body and its relationship to the generalized food body and what you're going to have to do to survive and grow and do well. We now have the technology of the rocket mass heaters. We can use waste material for heat and cooking, and also it's very healthy cooking because none of the fumes are in the place with you. Really interesting, and if you can, you should buy the books on that from the Amazon. Let me see. I don't even have it down here, I don't think. No, damn it, it's upstairs. Sorry. But one of the guys who came up with them worked for 15 years in third world countries trying to reduce the amount of damage to women's lungs doing cooking in a bad environment. I think he succeeded marvelously with these. Plus, we can use them up here in the northern hemisphere for heating our butts. So there's that. The key technologies that we've got coming down the pike are going to include some of the crap that the breakaway civilization has got. I'm quite convinced that our data, this is a new subject, sorry about that, we're transitioning here, not much of a decent segue, and I'm going to have to go get some rice here and get to work real soon, but some of the hints from the last time I looked at the data, which admittedly was Tuesday 2 weeks ago. It's been that nasty of a period with Kathy's health. It's been ongoing for some time. It's terribly deadly. I'll let her discuss it if she wants. It's not my place to reveal that. And we're still integrating ourselves and still accepting internally what's gone down here. Anyway, though, a few weeks back I looked at the data, and there are some real hints that there's going to be let's call it an escapee technology coming out. This escapee technology, I think, will be and this is an opinion, because the data isn't really clear. It's going to have an impact on all of us. That's clear. It's going to have a flash impact. It'll be a giant sparkly that we'll all like. I don't think it'll be something we buy. I think it'll be more of an idea that we can implement ourselves, like being able to build your own rocket mass heater here. But it'll just be, maybe how to build your own, I don't know, small ray gun or something. Who knows? But it'll be something on that order. There are some indications that the importance will be the thoughts and the surrounding component that come out with the device or whatever it is that we'll all be whipped up about, the sparkly. So that's something to look forward to. I think it'll occur before the end of December, and it'll certainly be visible. It's got one of the highest levels of visibility things I've ever seen in terms of a non-person. So in other words, it has levels of visibility like the Woman of Scars and that kind of thing, but it's not a human. And it's a device or an inanimate, well, I won't say inanimate, but a device of some kind. It may relate to time for all I know, but in any event, one last thing here. I ran across this description, and now, admittedly, I have not listened to it. It was George Kavasilius on Red Ice, and the description says in there that he's going to discuss how the chakra system is a way in which we are manipulated. Personally, I think that we should maybe, if that's his view, I'm going to go and listen to it. If that's his view, I'll be able to discuss it. But the term as though we are being manipulated by our chakra system, the language is, I find, a little bit unsettling, simply because the chakras are an inherent part of our body. It's simply a different part of our body that you can't see. When you get to the point where you can actually see auras and so on, you start getting glimpses of the actual chakra, and they are not an add-on. It's not anything that's been placed on our body. It is as integral to our body as our brains or any cell, and in fact, none of our body could exist without them. So that was just a little bit odd, and I'm going to go and listen to it when I have time, and may get all over his case for the language used, or may not, depending on what he's actually saying. But the description was just a little strange. So I'm going to end it here. I got to get some stuff done. Got to go check on Kathy, and then scoot on out and get the heater going. Stay safe, guys, and really look at this mood cure. Even if you think yourself not a candidate for psychiatric meds. You may be a candidate for altering your amino acids, and it can change your life. And I'm very pleased for myself because it gave me a level of emotional support for getting through what has arguably been the roughest 3 months of our lives here, and culminating in